right now. John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, is with us. John, how are you, sir?
Doing great. Good to talk to you again.
It's great to have you on. And you were testifying yesterday at the Senate hearing on the Stand Your Ground laws. You've got a piece at the Chicago Tribune in defense of Stand Your Ground laws. I'm guessing the piece you wrote is very complimentary to your testimony?
Yeah, it basically took part of my testimony and turned it into an op-ed.
All right. So first of all, I'd love to get just your general thoughts on the hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday.
Right. Well, I thought it was somewhat surreal. Look, we had two very sympathetic witnesses that were there, Trayvon Martin's mom and another mother who had lost her son in a shooting. Both of them were black, and they were there to go and try to serve as props, essentially, for the case that there was racial bias in Stand Your Ground laws. And as I say, it's very hard to say anything when you're having to deal with a mother who's lost her son under any circumstances. I have 5 kids. I can't imagine what it'd be like to deal with that situation. The problem was, and the reason why I was saying it was somewhat surreal, is that neither of their cases really had anything to do with the debate over Stand Your Ground laws. And obviously in the Trayvon Martin case, the defense was never raised. At Stand Your Ground, you didn't have any reason for it to apply, given that Zimmerman was on his back. Even the prosecution was basically conceding at the end that Zimmerman was on his back. The prosecution, though, was suggesting that possibly at that time Trayvon Martin might have been getting off him, though there was no evidence offered to that effect. And your ability to retreat, there's no ability for Zimmerman to retreat in that case. And in the other case that was mentioned, a young man named Davis who had died, supposedly, if the mother's testimony there is accurate, her son was just listening to loud music, and somebody shot him for listening to loud music when there was no threat, no anything that was going on, basically. And Stand Your Ground would be irrelevant. I mean, somebody can go and bring any type of defense they want, but it's simply not relevant. So you had those as kind of the backdrop. On our panel, they served as the first and the last witnesses on the panel. And in between, you had a couple people for the Democrats trying to argue that Stand Your Ground laws were racially applied. And I think even their own evidence, in fact, clearly showed the opposite of what they were claiming.
In what way, John?
Well, there's one easy point to make, and that is, the shocking finding will be 70-80% of minorities, black or Hispanic, who were killed. Their killers were not convicted, and whereas you had a lower percentage, about 60% of whites who were killed, their killers were convicted or weren't convicted. And so, but the thing is, what you have to realize is that almost all the blacks are killed by other blacks, and in fact, all the Hispanics were killed by other Hispanics. So, if you want to go and argue that discrimination is occurring because the people who were killing were less likely to be convicted when they were raising Stand Your Ground defenses against minorities, you have to deal with the fact that you would have to be saying that there's discrimination in the sense that when you have black or Hispanics doing the killings, they're the ones who are frequently let off. And, it's just not very logically consistent to claim that discrimination is somehow occurring on one end but not on the other then in favor of those groups.
Right.
And the second thing is, if you actually look at the cases, they essentially assume that all the cases are the same, and they're not.
Well, that's a very good point here. We are talking about a fairly small number of cases, John, and as you say, individual circumstances are going to matter in every one of these instances.
Well, even if you were dealing with a large number of cases, individual circumstances matter. If there are differences in kind of the average type of case that you're dealing with across the races. So, for example, most of the blacks who were killed had guns. That would affect your belief on whether or not the person who said that they were using stand your ground to defend themselves had a legitimate reason to go and defend themselves. Most of the blacks who were killed, the killing was witnessed by somebody, or there was physical evidence involved. Those types of things made it much easier to accept the stand your ground type arguments that were being made by blacks who were having to go and defend themselves against other people. And so the fact that blacks who raised stand your ground defenses or Hispanics who raised stand your ground defenses were less likely to be convicted, isn't evidence that blacks were being treated improperly. I think, if anything, the evidence indicates that they were treated more favorably, but there are reasons for doing that, and the cases were different.
Yeah, you write in you write in the Chicago Tribune that whether the person killed initiated the confrontation and whether there was an eyewitness were the most important factors in determining whether or not there was a conviction.
Yeah, well, and that's good. That,
right.
You want to, if somebody initiates the confrontation against you, it makes, and there are witnesses, it makes it plausible that the person was really being attacked, that they had a reasonable fear that their life was in imminent danger or they were in imminent danger of serious injury. And so, that's kind of how you would like the legal system to go and work. And instead, trying to point to it as some type of failure of the system just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then there's a third point that I tried to make, and people can see this by going to crimeresearch.org. I have the clips, and the testimony. But the other point that I was trying to make was that even if you look at their own evidence, and the Tampa Bay Tribune data, which we were just talking about, is really evidence that they pointed to too. But there's this Urban Institute study that's gotten a lot of attention, and the thing is, the study's evidence shows the opposite of what they claim, their own results, because the only table that they have that really deals with the change in outcomes of cases under Stand Your Ground is Table 3. And if you actually look at their own results, Stand Your Ground laws in a state actually improve the odds that minorities will not be convicted for when they raise Stand Your Ground type cases.
Talking with Dr. John Lott. And Dr. Lott, let me ask you, do you think it is possible, given the hearing yesterday, is it possible to have, and I applaud you for your efforts. I guess generally speaking, is it possible to have a conversation about Stand Your Ground without it becoming, again, this polarizing topic? Are we there yet?
Well, I don't know. I was just thinking about that myself yesterday. Here you have obvious charges of racism that's involved. It's very hard, as I say, to go and kind of debate these issues with mothers who your sympathy goes out to. On the other hand, you have some really horribly done studies that just, if as long as the conclusion says what the Democrats on the panel or those testifying wanted to say, they cite it. But they don't even read the study very carefully, because even the authors of the study, they're just reading what the authors say, and the authors claim that they find evidence that goes a certain way, but their own evidence goes the other way from what they're claiming. And so, but yet they kind of hold it up as a shield and constantly refer to it. And it's really disappointing that you can't have kind of a thoughtful discussion on things. And here's the problem. The problem is while our heart goes out to these cases, even though they're not relevant for the Stand Your Ground laws, the point of Stand Your Ground laws is that it helps victims of crime. It makes it easier for them to defend themselves. They don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to be second-guessed at a later point, whether they retreated as far as possible, and won't have to face criminal charges themselves for defending themselves or a loved one. And, if you create that uncertainty in people's minds so that they have to worry, have I backed up far enough before I can go and defend myself, you make it so that people are more vulnerable and they'll be more likely to die themselves. And that's the tragedy. And if one wants to bring in race, the point I was trying to make, and again, you can see the testimony and the research at crimeresearch.org, is that it's the very people that they claim that they want to help, poor blacks in high-crime urban areas, who are the ones who are benefiting the most from this. As my research has shown all along, it's the people who are most likely to be victims of violent crime are the ones who benefit the most from having the option to be able to go and defend themselves.
Listen, Dr. Lott, we are out of time, unfortunately, but I really appreciate you coming on the program today. What's the website for the Crime Prevention Research Center again?
crimeresearch.org.
All right, listen, thank you so much for coming on the show, and hope we can have you back again very soon.
Thank you very much.